So, this is a requested episode about payroll. Sometimes we're responsible for payroll in HR, but most often we just need to maintain a close and effective relationship with payroll. How do we do that? I mean, it's a critical part of the employee experience. Well, a discussion about that's coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams. This is the HR Hub, and on this show, we're going to talk about anything you can imagine related to HR. Please subscribe to the show or to the podcast to keep learning from my amazing guests. So today, my guest is Steven Van Alstine. Steven's the Vice President of Professional Standards and Education for the National Payroll Institute. He's worked in payroll for a long time and recently presented at the National Payroll Conference. He's also part of a project to evolve the standards within the payroll profession. Hi, Steven. How are you?
I'm great, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I've been trying to have this one for a long time. So glad we're here.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that critical relationship between payroll and HR when it's not the same thing. We'll do another episode about tips for payroll for HR, but we'll not this one. So I find as a consultant that payroll is too often ignored or sidelined by HR until there's some sort of looming disaster, like someone's not going to get paid, or I don't know. I imagine you can imagine the disasters. But why do you think we're doing that? From a payroll perspective, why are we, ignoring them?
Yeah. It's that age-old question, honestly, Andrea. And you mentioned that I recently spoke at our national conference in Calgary, Alberta in June. And one of the panels I did was on the importance of collaboration between HR and payroll, because it is becoming a much more integrated relationship. And so why has it been ignored? It's a great question. And I think there's a few reasons for that. And I think that the first and most important one is just visibility and perception. I think payroll often operates behind the scenes. We've been a profession that has been seen as transactional, back office, kind of a necessary element of the operation of an organization. But when it's done right, which it often is, no one notices, which ironically leads to that it gets overlooked. So I think there's also that division of responsibility. So again, HR may see payroll as transactional, as I said, or purely administrative as opposed to being strategic. And, I recently you're talking about raising the standards of the payroll profession is something that I've been very passionate about and why I've been with the Institute for as long as I have. We just recently rolled out a competency framework for our profession. And one of the elements of that framework is strategic partnership with business, not just, HR, because I think that's a very important strategic relationship, but with other parts of the business, with finance, with the C-suite. So, HR has done a fantastic job, I think, of raising their profile and being seen as strategic and having a seat at the C-suite table. And payroll, we're getting there. And I think what's happening is I think there is a greater appreciation for the role that payroll plays. The other thing is reactive culture. In many organizations, collaboration only happens when something goes wrong, rather than being built into process and planning. So again, we're seeing that evolution take place. And then the final one I would say is system silos. So while we're seeing more integration, there are or have been historically disconnected systems and teams contributing to, those communication gaps. So what we're seeing is like payroll software and service providers like ADP, like Dayforce, like Payworks, they're really positioning themselves more as HRMS or HCM, that human capital management, as opposed to just being, again, siloed as payroll. There is such an integrated component to those roles. And again, I think we're going to explore that through our conversation and have that greater appreciation for why that that recognition, I think, of the role payroll plays in the organization is so important.
After that answer, I was thinking about the strategy, like, but I'll get to that. I think we'll get to that. Before we do, I can appreciate that payroll's trying to do their best work, HR's trying to do their best work. But I have run into payroll people who are deeply inflexible.
Yeah.
Like, it must fit in this box, and if it doesn't fit in this box,
Hmm.
there's something wrong with you. Uh, and they're also gonna and they've resisted creative solutions to problems that have come up. As a payroll person, can you explain that and help me understand so that I am more patient?
It's a fantastic question, and it's funny because we always say, the HR people are the warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
We're kind of the, follow the rules, make
Yes.
sure everything is compliant.
Yep.
We have obligations, we have very, very strict deadlines. So I think all of that weighs into the equation. But, we're risk averse for a reason because
Mhm.
payroll professionals are accountable for compliance, precision, and protecting employees' livelihoods. So there's little room for error, right? Like there's a
Mhm.
lot of pressure on us to make sure we're getting it right. And that organizational compliance is so critical.
And can I say that if you get it wrong, hell rains down on you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And then
then
there's the whole concept of framework versus flexibility, right? So payroll is, as we said, is rule bound. So there's tax legislation, employment
Mhm.
standards, collective bargaining agreements, and this can clash with HR's people first and innovative mindset. So you guys are seen as the people first, the innovation, the innovators, as I say, the warm. I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say
No, no,
warm and
no, that's fine.
fuzzy, but
Yeah.
that's kind of where we come from. So, you say inflexible, detail oriented. We say, oh, well, you guys might be a little on the other side. So, it's about finding that common ground, right?
Mhm.
And then there's
Mhm.
the whole pressure when we're sometimes fighting fires or under resourced payroll professionals, we can appear resistant when in
Mhm.
fact we're trying to avoid further risk and
Mhm.
further rework. And then finally, communication style. The language of compliance and calculations is very different from HR's people and culture
Mhm.
focus. So
Yeah.
that misalignment can sometimes create a little bit of friction
Yeah.
where it needn't
Yeah.
be, right? I think
Yeah.
it's just understanding where each come from.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. And I just think, when you guys get in so much trouble every time there's an error in payroll or something happens with payroll, I mean, I would become risk adverse in a hurry too.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
sure would.
yeah.
Okay, so tell me, what keeps payroll people up at night?
I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to talk a little bit about what you just said about the risk aversion and paying people incorrectly, right? There's a lot of pressure on us. Even one wrong paycheck can erode trust, affect
Mhm.
morale of organizations, or cause financial harm. Like people
Mhm.
have mortgages that they have to pay. So what
Oh,
happens if
yes,
the payroll is
absolutely.
delayed?
Yep.
So it's that expectation of perfection. And there used to be a saying that we had in payroll, and I say used to be because we're trying to kind of push it to the background. A paycheck that is 99% correct is 100% wrong. And I think tied into that are compliance mistakes,
Yeah.
like legislative missteps.
Yeah.
Those can lead to costly audits, penalties, or even reputational damage. Of course, there's changing rules and timelines. So keeping up with that rapidly changing legislation,
Mhm.
technology glitches, system errors, or integration failures. We just went through a learning management system implementation here at the Institute a couple of years ago, and we can appreciate what our members go through when they do a new implementation of a new technology. because the best laid intentions are often thwarted by things
Uh-huh.
that are sometimes out of your control.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's, again, we talked about that control, that need for control because of these things that can really have that impact on the payroll professional. And then the
I
last
would
one I'm going to say,
yeah.
sorry, did you have something?
Well, I would say about the LMS, like implementing an LMS, it isn't as we're not talking about people being able to pay their mortgages
Exactly.
there, like, the stakes are
Exactly.
not so
The
high
stakes aren't
as
as high. Exactly.
as opposed to implementing a
Yeah.
pay system. Anyways, you were gonna tell us about your last
So
one.
the last one, and this is where again we talk about how we form a good relationship
Yes.
with payroll and HR. It's last minute data from HR and the expectation that, oh, we can just give this to payroll and it's going to be no problem to do it. So it's again that communication and understanding the importance of the timing. So that
What
can be,
kind of like, give me an example of
so
last minute data that
new
was then used.
hires, like somebody gets
Oh,
hired and the information doesn't get over, and then that therefore that person's going to get impacted with their first pay. And on the converse side, the terminations, we get incredibly frustrated with the misunderstanding of how important certain elements of a termination are to payroll, because in British Columbia there's a very short window within which when somebody's terminated when they have to be
yes.
provided with their final pay.
Yes,
We're
there is.
talking like 48 hours.
Yes.
And that's legislated. So again, just that expectation that, oh, by the way, we just terminated this person. Sometimes it will be, oh, we terminated this person a week ago and we need to make sure we get their information to them. Well, now we're not compliant.
Yeah.
So
And now you've got someone who's already mad because they got terminated, and now
yeah,
they're really mad because they didn't get their last pay, um,
right.
as they were supposed to. Uh, can we is it easy to, like, in HR, and I'm HR side. I think that terminating someone is as easy as a press of a button. I
Mhm.
literally think that. Is it?
Yeah. Oh, no, no, it's not. I mean, there's a lot of, you have to make sure that you're compliant with the uh, wages in lieu of notice requirements. Is there a severance component? Is there any outstanding overtime? The record of employment has to be completed. Like there's a whole set of processes that has to be provided to that individual when they're terminated. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and these things are out of cycle, right? They're out of the normal cycle of
Mhm.
how we pay our employees. So there's a process for how you have to address that. Now, again, technology has come an incredibly long way.
Okay, yeah. What does good collaboration between HR and payroll look like? And I wouldn't mind getting like tactical here, like
Yeah,
on your payroll cycle. What does it look like?
right, right. So I think obviously I'm just going to bucket them and then we'll talk about them individually. So I think communication,
Yeah.
shared goals, joint problem solving, and having regular touch points. I think that's how we. So you want to talk about, tactical stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, like having regular touch points, weekly syncs or shared calendars for key events like year end, bonus runs, things of that nature, shared
Um
platforms and workflows.
yeah, I think you said something like weekly touch points?
Weekly syncs, like just syncing up, like
How
stand
does that
ups.
yeah, what is that actually like? Is that a meeting? Is that
Yeah,
an
yeah,
email?
it could just be a 10-15 minute, like, let's come together, what's happening, and then this is where things can come out to say, okay, well, we're pretty stretched this week because we're trying to finalize remittances that are going to the Canada Revenue Agency for the organization for this threshold cycle,
Right.
or where there's a bonus run that's happening. So we're doing that on top of regular payroll that's being transmitted. So therefore, there's a little more dynamics happening within the payroll department this week. So just be aware of that because that's going to have an impact on things.
Do you is there like a standard agenda for that meeting? For most HR, like they're like, if they have little payroll exposure, they don't know what should happen at that meeting.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe it's not a hard agenda to come up with, but
Yeah, I don't think so. Like, what it could even involve is at the outset, what what is on payroll's agenda for this week, or even if you do it every 2 weeks, like what's happening within this cycle, this 2 week cycle. What's
Mhm,
happening on the HR side? Maybe you're bringing on doing onboarding for summer students that are coming on
mhm.
board, for
Yeah.
example. And I mean that does have a downflow effect on the payroll department as well, because if there's a big influx of those summer students coming on board, you have to plan for that influx of new employees being put on the payroll, right?
Mhm.
So again, these syncs don't have to be lengthy, but
Yeah.
they can really highlight what's coming down the pipeline
Mhm.
and what do we need to be attuned to, because your impact may be one cycle ahead of what payroll's impact is going to be, or vice versa, depending
Mhm.
on what the situation is. But
I can imagine that you're getting pushed to um cut corners,
oh
cut
yeah.
compliance corners.
Well, and so it's interesting you say that, because we're right now we're working on, again, when we talk about standards, and we've got a professional code of conduct. I used to actually sit on the Ontario HRPA's Complaints and Investigations Committee as a public member. So I was front
Oh.
facing with complaints that would come in against professional practice. So we have a similar process at our organization. And again, it's, we get calls often to our info line, which is staffed by payroll consultants, saying, I'm being faced with an employer. I'm not saying it's HR. It's rarely HR. It's usually somebody like somebody in the C-suite, or an
Yeah.
owner, or somebody in a more authoritative position, saying, well, I don't care what the legislation says. I don't care that it says that this is supposed to be treated like a taxable benefit. We're not going to do that. So then, payroll's head explodes. Like, what do I do? I'm being directed to not follow the legislation. So what do you
Mhm.
do in that kind of situation? And again, in some instances, when we talk about HR specifically, it's about educating HR to say, okay, we're putting in a new benefits program, and here's what it's going to be. Now we need payroll to tell us what are the tax implications of that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because sometimes that's not always considered, especially when an organization is going through a benefits change or
Do you have any good war stories? Horror stories when HR and payroll are not working well together?
um
Oh, come on. You can like you can like totally
I'm trying to that's
find one where you can blame HR, like where it really
yeah,
was our fault.
yeah. um I mean, I know conceptually, because Andrea, I've worked for the institute for 28 years, so I'm
Yeah.
not in the trenches anymore. I mean,
No. Horror
I
story.
do hear horror stories. But oftentimes they relate to things like, incorrect or delayed pays, taxation errors because of incomplete or wrong data,
Mhm.
breaches of trust where employees lose confidence in both departments, and just improper terminations or incorrect benefits deductions or non-compliance with labor legislation, just
Yeah.
because the organization is puts a maybe has like does a revamp on the policy the employee handbook, and it's what will employees want, but what do we have to do to make sure that we're compliant?
Mhm.
Oftentimes those are kind of the horror stories that we hear.
And I think, I mean, they might be, from my own perspective in HR, they might not be these epic horror stories,
Right, right.
but
They're
but
often not.
but they are embarrassing. They're embarrassing to payroll and to HR
Yes,
because they're also so easily avoided if we had,
absolutely.
done things the way they should be done. Um, they're an enormous headache of now managing an upset employee, answering leadership questions about why, defending the reputation,
Yeah.
and of, the department. Like, these are just not the mistakes we wanna be making.
Yeah.
Um, what is HR missing when they fail to see the value that payroll brings?
So that's a marvelous question because I
Oh, good.
think, and I think that we've kind of been hitting on some of it as we've been having our conversation, but I think it really falls into four areas. One is data insight. The other is
Wow.
the compliance knowledge piece
Mm.
of the strategic partnership potential and trust enablement. So I'll go back and let's look at each of these more specifically. So data insight. Payroll sees data real time about the workforce. Like we are
Right.
seeing detailed workforce data, earnings, overtime trends, absenteeism patterns, turnover triggers. We're seeing that. Data analytics has where we see payrolls role moving again from just that data entry transactional to okay, what do we do with the data? How can we leverage the data? How can we benefit HR in leveraging this data? We can tell you about how much overtime, where are the areas of highest overtime in the organization, and how can we curb that by maybe hiring some more resources because overtime, of course, is at a premium. That leads to higher labor costs. So we can reduce those labor costs by hiring more full-time employees, believe it or not.
Mm.
So,
Yes, yes, yeah.
so the data insight, the compliance knowledge, again, we're deeply versed in employment legislation and risk mitigation. And then I've already talked about how some of these things touch on strategy. Um, Payroll can inform total reward strategies, workforce planning, and cost management. And then the final one I think is a big one, is that payroll touches every employee, every pay cycle, and has a huge impact on their trust in the organization. Huge. Because how long does it take to build trust? You can lose it in a second,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That one I think is, I mean, and it is at the heart of the employee experience, at the heart of
yeah,
the employer-employee contract. They're Yes, they're getting value out of coming to work, but the main reason they come to work is so they can put food on their table
yeah,
and, that sort of thing, and if we don't deliver on that,
yeah,
man, it so undermines trust.
it does.
So we're getting to the end of this. Where can someone find out more about you and the Payroll Institute?
So we've got one of, I think, the easiest URLs on the planet. It's just simply payroll.ca.
Wow, there you go.
So
You
how
sure
much more
do.
simple can that be, right?
That's a great
So
URL.
so that is our URL, and we've got fantastic resources. Now, some of the resources we do make public, but
Mhm,
obviously some of our resources are for our members. So we do have
mhm,
membership at the institute. I mentioned earlier that we have some compliance, what we call compliance advisors, and as part of
mm,
membership, you have access to basically these advisors if you've got a question. Because
right,
sometimes questions will come up out of the blue that are kind of unique or a point in time, and you may just
mhm,
need a little bit of guidance to shape your understanding or confirm your understanding. So they can reach out to those compliance advisors. So we've got fantastic resources. We actually have part of our initiative around professional standards was to even though we're a self-regulated profession, we put all of our designation holders up on a registry that the employer population can review. So again, if some of your HR professionals are out there looking to validate somebody who you're hiring in a payroll role, you can look on
right.
that registry to make sure they're designated. We are growing in our designation numbers. We're close to 18,000 designation
Oh,
holders
wow.
nationally.
Yeah.
So that's a big factor. So again, we are the standard bearer for payroll, all
Mhm,
things payroll,
uh-huh.
and I love the fact that we continue to see the relationship between HR and payroll evolve just
Mhm.
because of all of the things that we've talked about the recognition of the need for communication, the recognition that it isn't just pushing a button, right? There is a complexity to what it is that we're doing.
Mhm.
And Yeah, we see, like, in our organization, we're an 80-person organization. We actually have an HR manager that is our payroll professional as well.
Okay.
So
All right.
there are a lot of smaller organizations where that role is played by one person, the
Yes.
payroll and the HR role.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I consult to a lot of those organizations too.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to close this. Well, thanks, Stephen. I really enjoyed that. I think HR would be seriously remiss not to consider the value that payroll brings and play, pay close attention to it because it is such a core part of the employee experience. I did an episode recently on compensation surveys, and a link to that's right here. Thanks for watching out there, and we'll see you next time.